There's a lot of markers that we can point to that show that this government was never the government of small to medium enterprises, despite a boardroom-bound CEO being sold to us as a business genius. Because for National, for years, they've constantly tried to trick people into thinking both being good at business is the same as being good at governance, and that big business, like the ones handing them millions of dollars in donations to make profit for themselves, like Bailey's here, is just the same as an SME facing the same struggles. But the fact is, under this government, we've seen the highest number of business liquidations on record every year that they've been in power. And it's not just a small difference between this government and the previous one. It's substantial. More businesses have gone under National than the entirety of Labour's last term, which included things like lockdowns and volcanic eruptions. Consumer spending is lagging because of inflationary pressures, and businesses have a range of new pressures as well, like new food industry levies and RUCs increases, on top of the pressures that every household's already facing, like increased costs for power or fuel or rents or rates, with a stagnated wage growth driving down discretionary spending for the average consumer, leading to a terminal slowdown for many businesses, and especially SMEs throughout our communities. And since 97% of all businesses in the country are SMEs, that has other really major knock-on impacts, like driving up unemployment to the highest numbers that we've ever seen, and pushing people overseas to find a better life at levels that we've also never seen, with no support for those needing it here because they get punched down on if they need help with things like benefits. You may have heard that the construction sector, for example, has had this big crash out in terms of staff and work, people going overseas to find work because there's nothing here for them, after the government gutted social housing builds. But people who own construction firms keep donating to the party that made this happen. The coalition decisions have directly shat on places like Wellington CBD. Firing 9,000 civil servants, the majority of which were working in that area, led to an immediate crashing of the local economy, which they tried to fix by demanding workers be less efficient and less productive and return to the office. And the coalition keep bending the knee to big tech, scrapping the digital services tax to appease companies like Airbnb, Apple, and Uber. They wouldn't allow the Digital News Fair Bargaining Act or a bed tax to go ahead. They gutted funding to the Callaghan Fund, and the Prime Minister has the audacity to tell SMEs to grow up. And it's not even like a one-off glib comment. If you ever look at the whole speech, it reads like something from Veep or The Thick of It. And this isn't a shock. At the last election, because National were so thin on the details that they were offering the public, they kind of got away without a huge amount of pushback on those details. Maybe the odd laugh from Jack Tame, but media generally couldn't push it. And they had economists from across the political spectrum tell them once their changes came out and their plans came out that they needed to change course. And they refused. So, when the CEO who sold deodorant and ran the national carrier was sold to us as a business expert who hired a limo to cross the street to tell us he was a man of the people, it really does feel like a lot of small to medium enterprise business owners were lied to directly, and now he tells them to grow up. Well, his coalition partners talk about paying people to bang in a great replacement conspiracy dog whistle. Oh, no, sorry, wait. That was a tweet from a few years ago when Winston Peters said the government had no place in anyone's bedroom. All right, here we go. Here's the one. And he wants to pay more for New Zealanders to have babies. While ACT sits there and talks about allowing teachers to use force on, their words, little shits of students. And apparently they're the grown-ups in the room. That's a concern. Hello there, Kia ora podcast listeners. I'm going to keep this one really short because there's already a whole bunch of stuff coming out today for podcast, including the audio version of the first Coffee and Context that we did Sunday morning. It's available now on podcast platforms. The video is also available on YouTube. There was some weird glitchy thing that happened that it wouldn't let it go out to Facebook, so I need to look into that this week and add it to my list of things that would also include getting ready for the New Zealand Podcast Awards, putting my nomination stuff in for that, excuse me, and looking at some funding for other stuff, because that would be nice. But yeah, that's not what this episode is about. I actually had a really fascinating day on Sunday. I went to our local Meet the Top Candidates event, and they had 4 candidates from Top, the one for Upper Harbour, the one for North Shore, and the one for Northcote, as well as the one for Auckland Central. And there were some really fascinating themes that came through from them, but it is a really hard one. I'm still processing my thought processes on all of this. I did find it quite an interesting coincidence that at least the 3 on the shore that are running are all recent returns from overseas in some way. I found that really fascinating. And I had some really long, in-depth conversations, particularly with Cody, who's running in Northcote, which is the electorate that I'm in, around how they're building their policies around health, because I have concerns around health. There are things that piss me off that this current government has done, many things, that I'm kind of curious about how that shapes their policy. Not so much going how can you work with somebody who's done this, but I did ask that question and just we just want to meet everybody in the middle. But questions like, how does the Medicard 3 free visits impact how you're going to make your policies? How does this systemic underfunding from the right impact how you make policies? And there was some interesting responses that come from lived experiences. Cody, who is working, sort of spearheading that policy around health, is a paramedic, so he works in that industry. He knows, particularly for the field that he's in, what's needed and necessary and what workers want. So it was fascinating. But while I was there, I kept getting all these messages come through from people going, oh my God, did you see what Winston Peters is doing? He wants to pay people to have babies because there's not enough babies being born. And if it was from any other party, you might be able to go, it's a population growth thing, but because it's from Winston, it's automatically tied now to this great replacement conspiracy that you have to have New Zealand babies, otherwise you end up with foreign babies. And it's disgusting. Like, that is absolutely disgusting. Then there is the comment that came from Paul Henry about little shits in the classroom. Like, what? How can media platform it from their framing for a start? Because that's what they've done. And how can there not be more pushback on this kind of thing? Because nobody should be describing anyone's kids like that to justify physical violence of any kind, or physical punishment, physical education. Like, there's just so much going on there. And yet people are buying it. Like, the media seems to be biting into it. And that means that there are audiences out there that buy it, and it's ridiculous. We have such a callously cruel, conspiracy-driven right-wing government at the moment, and the fact that we don't have the left running away in the polls at the moment, that's a concern. That's a real concern. So, lots of thoughts to process, and those all came in while I was out, which is why this is a nighttime video. You can tell by the lack of direct sunlight coming in on my face. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Anyway, I'm going to go. Hopefully my throat recovers. It's been a bit sore and tickly all day. I woke up this morning with a very runny nose. It was not a great way to start before jumping onto a live stream. And as I said, head to the live stream. You can find it on your podcast platforms now. It goes for about an hour. Had a lot of fun with it, actually. I hope it's really educational. Or if you want the video version that's got graphics and stuff like that, you can find that on YouTube. It's just under Coffee in Context. We'll do another one next week. I'd love to get some feedback from people on what they would like to see covered next week. But I guess we'll see what's in the news this week as well, because that will shape it a bit. Look, I'm going to go get things sorted. It's 9 o'clock at night here. So yeah, I will catch you all tomorrow. Ka kite anō. Live long, prosper, be one with the force. Look after yourselves out there. And please remember, you've only got a couple of days left if you want to look at switching to the Māori role. If you whakapapa Māori, you've only got a couple of days to be able to make that decision. You've got to be sorted by the 6th of August this year. And if you don't, you're going to just deal with whatever role it is that you're on. You don't get a choice in the end. But you also need to make sure by the 25th of October, Labor Day, that you have got your enrollment details up to date, because there is no changing in that period this year, in the early voting period. It's locked in, which we've been trying to tell people for ages, but the media just picked up on it. So now maybe people will listen to us. All right, I will leave you guys to it. Until next time, have a good one.